Hi, this is James Gordon of Victoria Live here for book review. Today's book I'm reviewing today, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. This um, uh, this was originally published in 1954. This tour edition was first published in July 1995. This is the second edition from November 2007. This is a decent Richard Matheson story. I pulled this out because Richard Matheson's birthday is tomorrow, so I decided to read some Richard Matheson books. I don't have many Richard Matheson books, so I won't be able to do a an art for appreciation video. So I decided to do some Richard Matheson stuff. But anyway, this is reread. I read this book a very long time ago when I was starting to get into reading horror and stuff. And the first time I read this book, I really liked it. The second time, I still enjoyed it, but there's some things with this story I didn't like, and some things I did like. So to me, it was like a decent read. I will say the very first act of the book is the best part of the book. That it's the best, and then the second act is when it kind of starts to go downhill a little bit, and then towards the third act is when it really goes downhill. And I really didn't like the bleak ending of the story, but this is still a decent read, and it's I would definitely say this story is definitely it has its creepy and eerie moments, and it deals with loneliness very well. So it has the main character is lonely, so it deals with that, and the vampires themselves are quite terrifying in this book. I even forgot there was vampire dogs in this novel too, which was just like, oh, there's something you don't see. Um, and I'll touch upon that too in my review as well. Um, oh yeah, overall this is a decent read. This book will definitely serve many inspirations to many other horror novels and films, like Night of the Living Dead was the inspiration from this, and um, the creator of the first Fallout game said one of his inspirations was this book, and this was apparently a major influence for Stephen King. Um, yeah, I still enjoy this book. It could have been better, but I still enjoyed it. All right, onto the book review. Plot: on a chilly afternoon in January of 1976, Robert Neville is the last human on Earth after a deadly pandemic has killed off most of the human population a year ago and has turned the rest into frightening vampires with pale white skin, fangs, sharp nails. Dogs are also infected by this virus as the vampire dogs travel in packs. Robert believes the reason why he's immune to the virus is from years ago after getting bitten by a bat. Living in his fortified house in Los Angeles, Robert has boarded all his windows to keep the vampires from breaking the windows and has placed guard around his house as vampires can't stand it. He also places speakers around his house and plays music to drown out the vampires pounding and moaning outside of his house, and has hooked up a generator to his house along with a wood lathe to make steaks since the vampires are immune to bullets, air conditioning unit, and a stock full of canned goods, meat, and other types of food. He also has reinforced the front door. Robert also has burned down the nearby houses in his neighborhood to keep the vampires from jumping on his rooftop. He returned home early as it's cloudy, making him worried the vampires might come out early as he needed more nails to board his windows with fresh plywood. Just as Robert is making dinner around 6 o'clock, he can hear the vampires coming. After dinner, he tries reading in his makeshift bar while drinking whiskey with soda. Despite the classic music playing over the loudspeakers, he can still hear them and wishes he soundproofed his house, and doesn't understand why they won't leave him alone. For 5 months they keep coming back, trying to break in, and hears one of the vampires calling his name while throwing rocks or bricks at his house. Robert tries another record but dislikes it as he grabs it off the turning table, breaking it, then fixing himself another drink. He then heads off to bed, placing earplugs, allowing him to sleep in silence, but swears he's going to hunt them all down. After waking up at 5:30, Robert gets out of bed, gets dressed, eats breakfast while writing out a to-do list, gears up, and leaves his house to find the two dead female vampires lying on his front lawn. He then opens his garage door and gets into his Willys station wagon, pulling out onto the driveway and opens the iron gate. Placing the two dead bodies into sacks to dispose of later, he gets back into the station wagon, drives off to get supplies to soundproof his house and make more steaks. Robert takes the two dead female vampires to a burning pit to dispose of them, refuels his station wagon, then goes to Sears, getting all the supplies he needs along with a new lathe, then goes to abandoned houses, killing as many vampires as he can find before returning back home for lunch. But the loneliness has caused Robert to become depressed, bored, and filled with rage against the vampires, causing him to get drunk a few times. Out of boredom, he drives over to the cemetery and finds a vampire resting inside a coffin. He kills it with a stake, then drives through the neighborhood till he finds a house he is able to enter in and drags out a vampire into the sunlight, watching it burn to death. However, it's getting late as he hurries back home, only to find more vampires waiting for him. He rams them over, but there are too many to deal with as he's nearly killed. Upon returning home, his food is spoiled and is nearly out of supplies. It takes him till March to get everything back in order. A month later, Robert goes to the library to study blood, wanting to know how the virus turns so many people into vampires and is it possible to find a cure. At first, his few tests are unsuccessful as he takes more books from the library along with a microscope to understand the science of blood and vampires better. But after further research, Robert is unable to find an answer to the virus, angering him until he hears a dog outside. He is able to capture it after gaining his trust by leaving food out as it hasn't been infected by the virus and gives him hope that there might be others who aren't infected like him, and it also makes him happy to be with something that's alive and isn't hostile. However, it is sick and only lives for 1 week. The dog's death leaves Robert depressed and gives up research, believing there isn't anything worth living for. Until one day he finds a woman walking down the street in broad daylight. Believing believing she too is immune to the virus, however, there is a lot more in store for Robert and the vampires. I Am Legend is a dark, bleak, and at times depressing journey of one man against an army of bloodthirsty vampires in the ruins of the old world that used to belong to mankind. The detail in the ruins of the old world, along with Robert exploring the abandoned areas either for supplies or hunting down vampires, I enjoyed. However, I wish we got more scenes of this as is only the first half of the novel covers this. While the second act focuses more on Robert trying to study vampires better, but also adds more scenes of his depression and loneliness, which I felt could drag on the story a little bit. But the third and final act I didn't like. It's a very bleak ending, and with the main character giving up at the end, I didn't like it at all. I felt the ending could have been a lot better, and also wish Matheson added more chapters, as I felt this novel was too short, as there were some things not explained well, such as the fact that vampires haven't been living off blood, but they're never shown feasting on any dead bodies, so what's keeping them alive? It's not explained if the vampires are feeding off animals they find in the wild or attack each other. I felt Matheson could have explained this better. I also wish there were more scenes of these vampire dogs, as they're only brought up early in the novel but are never shown again, and more scenes of the ruins of Los Angeles would have been nice too. While there is not a lot of characters within the story, I felt Robert Neville was alright but could go into uncontrollable fits of rage, which he would damage his own stuff and gets reckless a few times and nearly cost him his life. Ruth, I felt, could have been better fleshed out, and maybe a few other characters could have been added into the story too. Overall, I still recommend I Am Legend. It's a classic among horror, post-apocalyptic, and vampire fans. Despite its flaws, I still enjoyed it. That's it for the review today. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, it was fun going back reading I Am Legend again. As I said, this was like one of the very first horror books I read when I was younger. I started off reading like Stephen King, Richard Matheson, and Sean Hudson, and some other horror writers. But Richard Matheson was definitely an influence for my writing as well. Um, as I said, I love the first act of the book a lot, where it's like Robert Neville is exploring the ruins of like Los Angeles and like searching for supplies and stuff while hunting down vampires. I really like that scene, and I also like the part where he's like speeding in his station wagon trying to get home, and there's these vampires waiting for him, and he just like floors it and drives right into them and runs them over. And I was like, holy shit, this is really getting good. Um, and these vampires appear to be like almost indestructible. Like they can survive being run over by a car. They can be shot multiple times with a gun, and it doesn't affect them unless they're stabbed in the heart with a stake. And but when I was reading, I was thinking to myself, couldn't Robert Neville get a crossbow and shoot like a big bolt into their heart? Like that could be another method of killing them. I felt that would something that Madison could have added into the story, besides having to um, like find them and, and stab them in the chest with a stake. Or another thing that Robert Neville does a few times in the book is that out of boredom and frustration, he'll drag a vampire out into the sun and just watch them burn to death. Um, like it seems to be the only methods of like killing vampires and stuff, and yeah, and I wish there was more scenes of the vampire dogs. As I said, they're only brought up like a few they're only brought up like a few times early on in the book, and they never make an appearance again. I was kind of a little bummed. I was thought, oh man, it would actually be interesting if there's a scene where Robert Nell's being chased by these vampire dogs while getting supplies or stuff. That would have been nice too. Um, what I don't like with this book is the second and third act. I just felt that when it gets to the second act, I understand that the character is trying to understand vampires better and see if he can find like either like another weakness to them or a cure to the virus and stuff. But the scene kind of goes on for a bit, and then it goes on like a bit of a little like scientific uh, jar like scientific. It goes into like this whole like scientific route with trying to understand the virus and stuff. And I felt this was kind of just dragging on the story a bit, and I just kind of wished Matheson didn't add these scenes in the book. Just have the character just like studying vampires better and stuff. Um, so yeah, and the whole book just focused more on this, and then the other scene I didn't like was it just goes further into Robert Nell's depression. I understand this is like basically he's like the supposed to be like the last human basically, and it leaves him lonely and stuff. And I just felt this like the first part like the first part of the act it covers this well, but then it just progresses further with this, and it kind of gets a bit depressing to read after a while, and it just the character just becoming going on with his depression, his loneliness, and then his frustration. I just felt it was like, okay, I've already read this already in the first act. I don't need to read like more of it. Um, but the third act I felt was not the best. Where the I'm not going to spoil the ending for Iron Legend. You have to read it for yourself. But I didn't like the ending. I just felt it was very bleak, and I felt it could have been a lot better. Um, the other character that Robert L meets, Ruth, I felt she could have been better fleshed out into a better character and stuff. And um, but there's one thing that I felt Madison did not explain well was how are the vampires still alive? Like they have to survive on blood. Like early on in the book, there's like pretty much like feral vampires. They live off blood, but it's never shown them like feasting on dead bodies or animals or stuff. So I thought, how are these vampires staying alive? Like it never, he never answers that question. It's just they keep coming back. I thought to myself, okay, are they coming? Are they going to Robert because he's like the last blood source, or I just felt that the scene, like I felt this could have been executed a lot better, and then later on we're introduced to these other vampires that are kind of they're like half vampire, half human, and they can live off food and stuff, so that kind of makes sense. But early on in the book, these feral ones, like what's keeping them alive? Like that's the one kind of like plot hole I felt was in the book that Madison didn't execute well, but. Um, I just kind of wish this, and I also wish this book was longer. Like this is not the full length of the book. The full book is like 160 pages, so you can read this in like a single sitting or 2 or 3 days. To read Iron Legend. It's not a very long book, so I just wish it was I wish it was longer. I felt that Madison could have explored so much more with the story and stuff. He could have added some other characters that Robert Neville meets that are immune to the virus. Like maybe I have like a crazy person living like in the sewers or something, or um, maybe like a kid that's also immune and or something like that. Just it would have been nice to have some other characters and maybe some more flashback scenes too. Before the like this virus broke out and stuff, it's a kind of, it's that's another thing I like with the story. The virus is a mystery; it doesn't explain where they came from, and I like that. But I also wish the book was more like on a like survival thing, like Robert Downey having to find supplies and stuff. And the other thing too, I felt that I would have liked is that when Robert Noah's supplies are going low, he has to travel further to get supplies and stuff. And I also would have minded some like hunting scenes where he has to like hunt like deer or something for food or stuff. That would have been nice too if that was in the story. Um, just overall, it's to me, Iron Legend is a decent novel. It has its to me it has its flaws. It has some plot holes in it, but it's still a decent read. So I still enjoyed it. As for the films of the films loosely based on Legend, I haven't seen a single one that I have enjoy that even comes anywhere close to the story. I saw um, the first film, The Last Man on Earth. That was okay, but I found it kind of on the boring side. But apparently, Richard Matheson felt that despite the story diverging a lot from his novel, he felt it was still the closest to it. I have yet to see Omega Man, and I'd like to see that one, as I'm a fan of Charlton Heston. I do not like the third Temptation I Am Legend with Will Smith, not because of the actor, but that film to me just feels like it's more of a remake of Omega Man than a adaptation of the story, and it changes so much around. The infected are more like zombies than vampires, and I'm not a huge fan of like these running zombies. So that's what that film kind of feels like. It's just not it's kind of a boring story. The third film, I Legend, I just find it very boring and stuff. Um, I still will give Omega Man a try and see if that's entertaining or not. I've read that apparently George Romero wanted to do a I read that George Romero wanted to do a adaptation of I Am Legend, but it was unable to secure the rights to it, and that would have been great because he probably would have followed true to Rich Mashon's story, and I feel it's unfortunate because I think that someone could do a great adaptation of I Am Legend, but I feel that if they were to do a adaptation of I Am Legend, have the film follow more of the first act of the book, and then just add on to that, like add something else to the story instead of following like the second and third act, in my opinion. Just make something different. I feel like the I would just like it more if it was like more of like a horror survival type story than what the second and third act of the book becomes in it. But overall, it's still a decent read. All right, that's it for the review today. Hope you enjoyed it. And next book, I will be reading Dual Terror Stories by Richard Matheson. As I said, Richard Matheson's birthday is coming up tomorrow, so I'm going to be reading the collection of short stories by Richard Matheson to celebrate this horror icon. And this is another thing I read a very long time ago. A lot of good stories in this too. And I see, and the as and the collection name Duel has the short story of the same name, which was made into a excellent film with Dennis Weaver, Steven Spielberg's first movie. So I'll definitely be looking forward to reading the Duel and the other short stories in this collection. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and please don't forget to subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook group with the same name. Please support your review of fiction. Until then, I'll catch you later.